Nicholas Bethell is was a recent addition to the government. He went through one of these elections in the House of Lords and was then speedily moved into the government by Boris Johnson at the time of the COVID crisis. Nicholas Bethell had previously been running Ministry of Sound. He was the manager of Ministry of Sound, and is not somebody I came across. I designed posters and flyers, and indeed an entire interior for Ministry of Sound at one point. And I don't have any photographs of it. It's rather sad, but it took up a lot of time, and it was very bright. That was in the late 90s, and it was it remained for a long time. So I'm quite proud of that. But I don't remember coming across Nicholas Bethell, but I do know his name, Nick Bethell. So maybe I did come across him at some point. And Minister of Sound was constantly being challenged. And during Boris Johnson's tenure as mayor, I think at one point there was a question about ministry being shut down. So I don't know whether Bethell was in charge of handling that. But I know that Bethell and Boris were buddies of some sort. So when Bethell came into government, I suppose he could be relied upon to back Boris up. But that's not what he's done, and in fact he's exposed Boris at his weakest in the testimony that he's given to the COVID-19 inquiry. So he was the bit player that came before Lee Cain, and of course Lee Cain was the harbinger of Dominic Cummings, the great sort of vengeful address and sulk, really. Fascinating Westminster Theatre, but it gives you an insight into the way Number 10 worked during the time of Boris. I suspect it worked even worse during the time of Liz Truss. But surely we have the machinery in place to make sure our civil service and our system continues smoothly, even with the worst and most chaotic prime ministers. But evidently that isn't the case. Evidently we need to do more. Nicholas Bethell said that Boris did everything he could to try and avoid dealing with COVID, and he was Bethell was involved in test and trace, in developing the test and trace mechanism, but Boris would claim that he's got a book to write, or that he was busy shoring up the Brexit, which he'd engineered, which really, even at that point, was proving not to be as successful as he had hoped. He said it was difficult to get a response. There was a train careering down the tracks, and he couldn't get his priorities right. He said he personally found that completely unexplainable and baffling. He said, I know Boris Johnson found the prospect of the pandemic personally very difficult to focus on. It was bad news of a kind that he doesn't like to respond to, and he did everything he could to try to avoid the subject. I think that's a really clear and insightful comment about both Johnson and about the culture that had gone so badly wrong in Number 10. I think, in a way, Lord Bethell's comments are more useful than all the spluttering vomit of contempt that we heard from Dominic Cummings. What Bethell talks about is the chaos and an office culture that had gone so badly wrong, and he said that he was aware of this toxic culture in Downing Street, U-turning, hampering our efforts enormously, tremendously, and the extraordinary statements. So which we've heard in this inquiry about people should just recognise their fate, for people who will die anyway soon. This is shocking that these... I don't know whether that is more shocking than the foul language, but certainly those two things, to be able to see into what was going on, even if the legal teams that are conducting these interviews are softballing the questions quite significantly and are not following up a lot of the responses, are not questioning in detail. They're simply telling people to slow down. But this idea that we get from Simon Case, that Boris was constantly changing direction. He changes strategic direction every day. Monday we were all about the fear of the virus returning as per Europe, March, etc. Today we're in let it rip mode because the UK is pathetic, needs a cold shower. These are frightening statements. And it is astonishing how, in a moment of weakness, a leader can drag the entire country, the world, into utter chaos. And today we had a statement from somebody in Lebanon who said, we don't want a local civil war, we'd rather have a world war. What extraordinarily intemperate and foolish language. And here we have, in the Downing Street investigation, in this inquiry, here we have a demonstration of just how easy it is for one person to steamroller a country into chaos.